Budget can also be used to achieve full employment, and budgetary policy is the main initiative for targeting full employment. So while it's not used as the main policy to target inflation, it is the main one to achieve full employment. Basically, the best way that we can achieve full employment, just looking at the budget stance, is to employ expansionary budgets. Expansionary budgets will stimulate aggregate demand at the macro level, so across the entire economy, which will help to boost employment and the derived demand for labour. So for example, if we make tax cuts, people have more disposable income, they spend more, that generates increased employment. Same with higher welfare. They have more money, they spend it, that generates employment. Infrastructure spending creates jobs, but generates employment. So any expansionary budgets that stimulate aggregate demand should help to achieve full employment. Contractionary budgets that slow down the level of spending will slow down the derived demand for labour and reduce or make it harder to achieve the goal. The government can also focus, though, it has this flexibility to actually target particular sectors of the economy. So unlike a monetary policy that really only changes interest rates and only impacts the economy from a macro perspective, the government can use budgetary policy at more of a micro level. So what they can do is they can direct funds to retraining labour or improving the skills of the unemployed. They can try and better match job vacancies with people that are unemployed, so try and match people up and spend money on that area. They can give subsidies to businesses to hire certain people. They can put money into internship programs to get people with a lack of skills into the workforce. So the government, one of the real strengths of budgetary policy is it can target specific sectors of the economy to try and boost the demand for labour. It can also target particular types of unemployment. So if it was targeting structural unemployment, it'd be all about trying to give people the right skills and develop people's ability to be hired because they have more skills and therefore they're more desirable. It can target cyclical unemployment by trying to boost aggregate demand. It's really important that you discuss the distinctions between these two. If we're targeting structural unemployment, that's got nothing to do with the business cycle. It's more about trying to give people the skills they needed to get employed. So this one's more about skills and putting money into TAFEs and education and getting people to stay in school longer and helping people with their apprenticeships. Now this one here is all about trying to boost aggregate demand. It's all about measures to try and cut taxes, boost infrastructure spending, to get people jobs based on the fact there's more demand for products. So it's really important that you have the distinction between these two factors. This one, all about skills training, getting people to become more employable and preventing the mismatch of skills. This one is all about reducing unemployment by stimulating aggregate demand. They can also try and reduce long-term unemployment and youth unemployment. There's plenty of policies within this year's budget that are looking at reducing youth unemployment. One of the policies last year was a $375 million job package, which was all about helping people with interview skills, resume writing, all this kind of stuff to try and get them into work. So specific measures we can use to try and target employment, for example, a work for the dole scheme. So people that are on unemployment benefits, they make them work to try and develop key skills so that they are more job ready. Welfare to work initiatives is the same sort of thing, is giving people skills so they are more employable. Increased business tax concessions, so again, it's trying to get businesses to invest, and therefore because they're investing, they need more employees. It might be tax concessions for employing certain people, which would have an even stronger effect. So it might be tax concessions for employing people over 50, tax concessions for employing young workers. And that's the same sort of thing. Subsidies for businesses taking on long-term or younger workers. These people are the most likely to be unemployed, so we put policies in place to try and target young or old workers. Increasing expenditure on education and training. Again, that's all about structural unemployment. So getting people into work, getting people the right skills, so TAFEs, apprenticeships, putting money into these kind of things. Funding for the unemployed to start businesses is another one, so making it easier. You might give them tax concessions to make it easier to start businesses. Increased funding for better job placements, make it easy for people to find jobs. And helping the unemployed with interview and resume writing skills would be another one to make them more job ready. So they're all about genuinely targeting employment, and I prefer to use policies that are directly related to employment rather than just talk about things that are going to boost growth and then link it to employment. The better policies are the ones that are directly targeted to employment. The other way we can boost employment is to target participation rates, but you've got to be really careful with your language if you use this. The government can implement measures to increase participation rates. For example, they could increase immigration, they could put money towards education so more people will join the workforce in the long term, even though that might reduce participation in the short term. They might cut maternity leave so more people will come to active work quicker after having babies. All of these things, increasing the pension age is another thing to increase participation. Giving childcare subsidies to families is another way to try and get people back into work. The problem with increasing participation rates is that they can increase unemployment in the short term. So just if you are going to use some of these policies as ways to promote full employment, you've got to clearly articulate that they can increase unemployment in the short term, but in the long term they should put downward pressure on the price of labour, reduce labour costs, increase productivity because there's more competition for jobs, and therefore that will help to boost our international competitiveness and keep jobs in Australia. So if you are going to target these policies related to participation rates, you've got to clearly state that they can hurt unemployment in the short term because there's more competition, but in the long term, because of the lower wages, because of the increased competition and increased productivity, it decreases inflation, increases aggregate demand and real GDP, and therefore boosts the derived demand for labour in the long term. So if you are going to talk about something like childcare subsidies or increasing the pension age or anything like that that's going to boost participation rates, you've got to clearly articulate that the short term is bad, but in the long term they can help. Thank you.